Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to talk about a single fatal flaw in financial design. It's a flaw that has caused empires, economies, and even digital currencies to collapse over and over again with this kind of remarkable repeating precision. So, where do we begin? Let's start in 1992. This is the year a single speculator, the now famous George Soros, basically took on the Bank of England and, well, broke the British pound. And then, just 5 years later, it's like we see a replay. The exact same playbook gets used, but this time it brings the economies of an entire region, we're talking Thailand, South Korea, you name it, to their knees. Fast forward to 2022, a $60 billion digital currency empire built on that very same promise just vanishes. Poof, gone, into thin air in less than 48 hours. So what's the deal here? You've got a hedge fund, a massive regional crisis, and a crypto meltdown. On the surface, they look totally disconnected, right? But here's the thing. They are all victims of the exact same structural flaw. And believe it or not, the story behind it all starts with a very simple promise, one backed by actual physical gold. Okay, so to really get this, we gotta go back to the beginning. Let's talk about the system that really set the stage for everything that followed, the gold standard. So how did this whole thing start? Well, it actually began with a deal to fund a war. Back in 1694, the King of England basically said to a group of merchants, hey, you can form a bank, the Bank of England, and you can issue paper money. But it was all based on one critical promise. You could walk into that bank anytime and swap that piece of paper for a fixed amount of real, shiny gold. That promise? That's what created trust. And as the British Empire got bigger, the gold standard went global right along with it. And what's really wild is how a simple quirk of human nature kind of accidentally built this whole global system. See, Britain at first used both gold and silver coins, but then silver got more valuable. So what did people do? Well, what would you do? You'd keep the good stuff, right? People started hoarding the valuable silver coins and only spending the less valuable gold ones. It's a famous idea called Gresham's Law. Bad money drives out good. And before you knew it, all the good silver just disappeared from circulation, which pretty much forced Britain onto a gold standard by default. Now, you have to admit, on paper, this system was, well, it was beautiful. It seemed to have this perfect self-correcting mechanism. Like if a country spent too much and gold started leaving its vaults, its money supply would shrink, prices would drop, its exports would get cheaper, and boom, gold would flow right back in. It's a perfect loop. So if the system was so perfect, why did it all fall apart? The answer, in one word, war. World War I completely shattered the logic of the system. To pay for the war, governments needed to print a ton of money, way more than they had in gold to back it up. So they had no choice. They had to cut the link to gold. Those golden handcuffs weren't broken by some elegant economic theory. They were smashed by raw political necessity. And with that, the trust in that original promise, it just started to crumble. All right, so after another world war, the world's leaders got together to rebuild the system. But this time, they did something different. This time, the US dollar basically became the new gold for the entire planet. So this happens in 1944. You've got the US sitting on something like 70% of all the world's gold. So a new system is born, Bretton Woods. And the rules were pretty straightforward. The dollar gets fixed to gold at $35 an ounce. Then every other major currency gets pegged to the dollar. In one fell swoop, America became the world's central bank, and the dollar was, quite literally, as good as gold. But here's the problem. This setup created a fatal paradox, what economists now call the Triffin dilemma. Think about it. For the global economy to grow, the world needed more and more dollars. But the more dollars the U.S. printed to meet that demand, the more everyone looked at America's limited pile of gold and thought, can they really back all this up? It was a total catch-22. The system was basically designed to self-destruct. And eventually, it reached a breaking point. You had countries like France literally showing up and saying, we want our gold back, please. So on August 15, 1971, President Nixon gets on TV and just ends it. He unilaterally suspends the dollar's convertibility to gold. And just like that, the golden handcuffs were off. For good. For the first time in modern history, the entire world shifted to a system of pure fiat currency, money backed by nothing but trust. So, with gold out of the picture, what do? Well, a lot of countries still wanted that stability, so they started pegging their currency's value to the strong US dollar. But what they didn't realize was that this created a brand new hunting ground for speculators, people who got really, really good at spotting a fatal weakness. And that brings us right back to George Soros and Black Wednesday. See, in 1992, the UK was stuck between a rock and a hard place. They were in a deep recession, so they desperately needed low interest rates to get things going again. But their currency, the pound, was pegged to the super strong German mark, and that required high interest rates. It was a massive contradiction. Soros didn't create this problem. He just saw it plain as day and placed an absolutely enormous bet that the UK would have to choose its economy over its currency peg. He was right, and he made over $1 billion in the process. And this exact same pattern just repeated itself all over Asia in 1997. Countries like Thailand and South Korea had their currencies pegged to the dollar, but they didn't have huge foreign reserves. So when the speculators came for them, they fell one by one. But Hong Kong was different. When the attack came, they used their massive reserves to jack up short-term interest rates to an insane 300%. It made betting against their currencies so incredibly painful that the attack just failed. The lesson here was brutal and simple. Your peg is only as strong as your reserves. All right, now let's jump forward to 2022, because we're about to see this exact same economic drama play out all over again. But this time, it's not a country we're talking about, it's just a few lines of code. So there's this crypto project called Terra, and it created a so-called stablecoin named UST. The promise? It was simple, and it should sound pretty familiar by now. 1 UST will always be worth $1. Now, instead of being backed by gold or a pile of foreign cash, this one was backed by an algorithm and a sister token called Luna. That Luna token, that was its digital reserve. You can probably guess what happens next. A large, coordinated attack pushes the price of UST just below $1. And the automated defense system kicks in and does exactly what it was told to do. It starts printing insane amounts of its reserve asset, Luna, to try and buy up UST and push the price back up. But what does that do? It floods the market with Luna, completely crashing its price, which means the reserves backing the whole system, they suddenly become worthless. That triggered a full-blown panic, a digital bank run, and a death spiral that vaporized $60 billion in just 2 days. So this is the hidden link we've been searching for. It doesn't matter if it's the Bank of England in 1992, the Bank of Thailand in 97, or a crypto algorithm in 2022. The structure of the failure is exactly the same. Step 1, you make a public promise to hold a fixed price. Step 2, you back that promise with a finite supply of reserves. And step 3, eventually the market calls your bluff and tests whether those reserves are actually big enough to weather the storm. Which brings us to a final, pretty powerful thought. When you look at all these episodes, you start to realize that holding a fixed peg isn't really about having a strong economy or a clever design. It's really just a question of endurance. It's about having pockets deep enough and the political will to outlast any possible attack. And the final question is, who can actually afford to pay that kind of price?